Monday, March 19th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we explain version control systems such as CVS and Subversion in simple, layman's, non-technical terms.
Let's do this.
So Friday night, actually Friday evening, I was trying to leave work and I noticed that a little bit of snow. A little bit.
Yeah, I was in the city, and there was some snow coming down, but it didn't look like anything that was gonna disturb my day. You know, it all melted as soon as it hit the ground, and there was not really any trouble.
So as soon as I get to my car, it turns into a blizzard. And I basically had to drive home in a blizzard. Now, I learned something interesting. The Taconic, which is this road that, for anyone who lives in New York, you know about the Taconic. Basically,
Sucks.
It was ground to a halt due to the fact that, I don't know, there were a million accidents on it because everyone's stupid and it was snowing.
It seems like every time it snows that people forgot how to drive in snow the last time. I mean, it's not like I go and I see this accident and there's some Florida plates there. Or it's not like I go and I see this accident and it's teenagers. It's middle-aged people from New York. Did they not drive in snow last winter or a few weeks ago? Or
It seems like
what?
most people react in one of two ways to there being snow on the ground. They either drive as fast as they always drive, which is already too fast in most cases, and end up crashing, or they go 1 mile an hour and don't let me pass.
Yep.
Though, growing up in Michigan has a lot of benefits. Also, having a car that doesn't really look it, but is actually pretty high off the ground and has a pretty good suspension in terms of dealing with snow. So, I decided to take the back roads. I drove off through the mountains to get home on this little road that kind of hugs the Hudson River. There was maybe one other car on this whole road, wasn't plowed, but you know what? I got home just fine because there wasn't anyone in my way.
Yeah, I was on the train, of course, on the way home, and I didn't really look out the window because I was minding some business while I was on the train. And I got off the train, there was a lot more snow in Beacon than there was in New York City.
Now, I submit to you that the Beacon train station is kind of low, and all of the roads out of it go uphill.
Well, I mean, the train station is on the Hudson River.
Yeah.
If the town was lower than the river, that would be trouble, I imagine, with flooding and such. So yes, it basically from the river, then there's the train station at the same level as the river, and then it only goes uphill from there. Pretty steeply, in fact. And basically, they didn't plow the parking lot. And
considering that it was still snowing heavily, there really wasn't any option.
And it had already snowed a lot, though, and they didn't plow the roads going out of the train station. So, like me and my car, along with, I'd say 5 or 6 other cars, were unable to make it out of the train station. Well, I did make it out of the train station. I didn't make it up the hill. Like, I made it about halfway up the hill, and then the incline at that point was just, like, the limit.
Now, here's the point at which
I couldn't go up.
Here's the point at which I want to jump in, because I know which road that is. That road goes, you can turn right and it seems to go off nowhere. You can turn left and it goes up to Main Street and 9D and all that. You could have turned right.
No. I'm smarter than that.
All right.
I was thinking, because, there was a long line of people going left, and I thought, I'm going to go right, because, when I got up to that part where you choose between going left and right, there was a little accident over to the right. And some emergency vehicles, and they weren't letting anyone go that way.
Wow.
All right, and then, so I go left, and I'm in this long line of cars going left. I probably could have made it up that hill if I was all alone, I got some speed when the incline wasn't there, and then I rolled up the rest of the hill, with my existing speed. I could have done that. But, no, it was a long line of cars, basically creep. And if I stopped and tried to, leave a space in front of me, nope, all the cars would come and pass me on the left and go over the WO line that no one could see.
Hate to say it, but that probably would have been me. It seems like, because I've seen it seems like Mazda 3s just don't handle snow very well.
I think it's because my tires are shot from driving in the middle of nowhere.
The tires aren't that bad.
They're pretty bad.
I took a look at them.
Do you know how to tell if tires are bad?
Yeah, there's little wear indicators.
You take a penny and you put it in the groove, and if you can't cover half the penny, then you need new tires.
Well, the actual way you tell is that there are wear things, and you look in the tread, and if the tread is worn down to the point where it's level with the wear indicator, then your car is now at the minimum tread level, if not below it, and you have to get them replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if your tires are just worn on the edges, then it's usually not that big of a deal.
No, my tires I'm going to need new ones pretty soon.
You shouldn't need tires that often.
No, I think they were shitty tires, and I think I drove them...
Oh, you mean the tires that the car came with, the brand new car?
Yep, that one.
Uh-huh. That's an interesting hypothesis, and I can't wait to see how well this all pans out.
It's gonna get new tires.
Anyway, so in the news, there's been this lawsuit against internetarchive.org, which is a really cool website that kind of archives the internet. So say you've got a website in 1997. They take a snapshot of it. And then in 2007, there's another snapshot. And there's snapshots all along the way.
That way you can, see, hey, what did Google look like in 1999? And you can go find out.
It's a really cool thing.
Did Google exist in 99? I don't think so.
I've always played around with this site. I like going to it. Well, a while ago, this crazy lady sued them for caching her crazy website. And this has suddenly been in the media. So I thought I'd talk about it as a little blurber thing of the day. I wasn't really going to do news about it. But then I fell down the rabbit hole. And there was far more to this than met the eye. Mm-hmm. So this woman has this website. Now, before we go any further, because this woman seems to be suing everyone on the planet, I would like to point out that everything I am about to say is hearsay that I read on other websites on the internet. I am not asserting anything. I am merely pointing out things that I have read on the internet that may or may not be true.
Uh-huh.
So, with that disclaimer aside, there is a woman named Suzanne Schell, and she has this crazy website. I'm not really sure what it advocates, because it's all over the place. It's one of those...
It's pretty much just nuttiness. Oh,
you know those kind of websites that have a million semi-revolutionary quotes and a whole bunch of kind of rambling text and a bunch of links
like Neil
all over
Adams'
the place.
website and the Time Cube website.
Yeah, lots of red text and different font sizes and links, and the text is all over the place, and there's frames and business all over. In fact, this site even has a pop-up before you can even go to it. I think it's some JavaScript thing, I didn't really look, that asks you if you agree to the terms of service to view the website, but it doesn't show you the terms of service.
Huh.
Well, it either advocates for or against child protective services. I am not sure which.
Huh.
It's generally nutty, in my opinion.
I would agree with that opinion.
So
I didn't even read anything on the site. I just looked at it and I said, wow, that's nutty.
So at the bottom of this website, there is a great amount of text. And this text, you should go to the website because it's pretty funny to look at. But at the bottom, there's all this text. And this woman has this really warped idea of how the internet works and how copyright works and how everything works. And it goes so far as to talk about the $5,000 licensing fee for caching or reproducing her site anywhere and how to buy a license to print it. And she has this whole crazy rant about how she disabled right-clicking and printing and all that stuff because people were ripping her off or using her website against other people.
This is like those people who say that if you go to a website and blocking ads, you're stealing because looking at the ad is the price of admission. Guess what? Have you noticed that other websites don't say that crazy shit? Have you noticed other websites don't have these crazy agreements? Do you notice you're the odd one out? Maybe you're not. Maybe you've never seen another website in your life. If you don't want your shit to be printed or saved as or used in other places on the internet, don't put it on the internet.
I'm actually of the mind that anything that is lawfully published to the internet on a public web server there should be some sort of safe harbor law saying that as long as it was published legally and in no violation of its own copyright or other copyrights, then anyone has the right to copy and disseminate that information. Obviously, I agree with certain restrictions to that. At least caching should be okay. Caching and content parsing.
I mean, just someone visiting her website is caching it in their web browser.
Yeah, I'm not paying her $5,000. You know what, though? I visited the site about 5 times since I read this business.
Yeah, and disabling right-clicking and printing with JavaScripts or whatever, guess what?
Doesn't work.
Someone who's smart enough, that's not going to work on them. I can still print it if I want. Your bullshit is not getting in my way.
I remember in the 90s when I first went to a Wares site and I was trying to download stuff and I right-clicked on something and this pop-up thing appeared and said, hey, you can't right-click. You got to pay to get access to blah, 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 blah. And then I turned off JavaScript and then I right-clicked and I downloaded my Wares.
That's right.
That was great. So that alone would have just been a crazy woman. Well, the internet picked up on this, the lawsuit and all that, and Dig had a story and a bunch of other sites had stories, and this woman started getting a lot of hits and a lot of hate mail, and there was a lot of articles all over the place talking about how crazy she is, and that pushed her over the edge. And it looks like she was even posting on Dig, defending herself as best this crazy woman can.
Well, she does what most crazy people do, and they react crazily. It's sort of like where a troll is usually one guy who gets a whole bunch of people to go nuts. It's sort of like the opposite, where a whole bunch of people do a simultaneous troll targeted at one person to make them go nuts. And this lady went all around the internet going nuts. We basically it was like a little bear in a cave, and we poked it with a stick and ran away. And everyone's sitting there watching to see what it's going to do. And they all laugh. Ha 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 ha.
So now apparently she's suing a bunch of people. I think she said she's going to sue Dig. Apparently, she wrote this crazy rant on her website, which I would just recommend you go read. She's got a bunch of facts as to why she's mad, and she's mad about all these iGeeks, she calls them. Then she has a footnote denoting that iGeek means internet geek. And, oh, you internet geeks have your panties all in a twat about this, blah, 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 blah. You just don't understand how the laws work, and you guys want everything, blah, blah, blah. It's just... It's so
You're living
nutty.
in the year 1929. Get with the times. We're going to kick your ass.
It's so nutty. If any of you can get through her site enough to tell me what her opinion is on anything other than this whole Dig business, what her stance actually is, I won't give you anything, but that'd be interesting. Now, the rabbit hole gets deeper. Now, this is all hearsay, and I'm going to start with the things that are more verifiable and go toward the things that might just be outright lies.
All right.
So apparently, in 2005, she demanded that the Internet Archive pay her like $100,000 for archiving her website multiple times between 1999 and 2004.
All I got to say is, we know it's craziness and there's no way it's going to happen. But if she succeeds, we are loaded. Cha-ching.
Well, among other things, she seems to think that spidering her website is impossible because of the safeguards she has. But two, even if it's not possible, it should be illegal, and you should have to pay. Obviously, she's never heard of robots.txt.
Yeah, and if she has heard of robots.txt, the only reason robots.txt works is because search engines decide that they are going to pay attention to it. Like, Google respects robot.txt. If Google comes to your site and they want to, put it in the Google index, they first look at robots.txt and they say, hey, does this person want to be in Google? And if the robots.txt says no, Google is nice and they won't put you in Google.
Yeah, which really only hurts you, unless you're doing something shady.
Yep, if I wanted to make a search engine, I could just make a search engine that doesn't give a two shits about robots.txt and spider you anyway. It's not a goddamn thing you could do about it besides making your website non-public.
Well, the legal system seemed to agree with archive.org and threw out almost all of her claims summarily and without any consideration.
See, did she not learn her lesson? Why would you ever try?
Learning her lesson. Well, apparently, now according to this, in 2001, the Colorado Supreme Court charged her with unauthorized practice of law.
Uh-huh.
And in, I think, 2004, maybe 2005, she was cited in another court for contempt of court for ignoring the 2001 order. And then apparently in 2006, this happened again.
I wonder what law she's practicing. Crazy law?
Now, I believe that hearsay because on her website, she has this crazy rant about unauthorized practice of law and how it's unconstitutional and morally wrong for there to be any restrictions on anyone practicing law. Now, I have feelings about that.
I got a slight agreement with that, but not much. I mean, you can't just have people running around being lawyers willy-nilly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the right of anyone to defend themselves in court if they feel that that is what they should do.
But you cannot go for, representing someone else in court without proper trainings and skills.
Now,
then you could just suck really bad. I mean, if someone decides to represent themselves and they suck at it, that's their own fault. If someone chooses you to represent them in court and you suck at it, then it's sort of your fault, and you shouldn't be allowed to take that fault unless you pass that bar thing.
Well, the problem with all that is just that when it comes to more mundane things, like a renter's agreement, or let's say software licenses, someone technological who doesn't have a law degree or isn't a paralegal, and remember, this all varies from state to state, I don't think someone like me should be barred from giving advice on software licenses, provided that someone like me makes it clear I'm not a lawyer.
Yep, I agree.
However, it seems like New York State is actually extremely down on that sort of thing.
See, I think you should be able to give anyone advice on anything. It's free speech. If it's legal advice, just like if it's doctor advice, you say, I'm not a doctor, but I recommend this medicine, I'm not a lawyer, but I recommend this law.
Yep.
But
now, I'd be great with a law that says how prominently you have to point out that you're not a lawyer, how often you have to say it, that sort of thing. Maybe you should wear a big yellow star on your arm that says, I'm not a lawyer, whenever you're trying to pull that stuff.
I think that's all right.
But I digress. So this woman's obviously, according to the internet, a nut job.
Hooray, nut jobs.
I'm not sure what else I could say about this, other than that, here's the final bit, and I saw this said in 3 different locations by apparently 3 different people. They claim that this woman has ties to the Church of Scientology.
Well, that explains her legal tactics.
And that her website is basically a trap in order to bring about lawsuits.
That could be so also.
They also claim that the Church of Scientology did this with a number of front organizations throughout the years. I do not know if this is true or not. It is entirely hearsay.
It's likely because it's very similar to the legal tactics of the Church of Scientology.
I find internet references to it, and I'm just going to relay it all to you because I find it hilarious.
It is quite hilarious. All right, so there's this guy named, I actually can't pronounce this name right, which I'm usually very good at. It's Dilip Kotecha. Dilipkotecha, right?
What nationality is that?
I have no clue. He looks like a nice guy, though. He's like an old man. Looks kind of like my grandpa, only thinner. I can't really tell. Anyway, he's basically a retired guy who used to work in the food manufacturing industry. But he's not retired anymore. Now he runs a business in instant yogurt. It's called Yokit, Yokit. It's like an instant cup of yogurt that lasts for 12 months on the shelf, and he's, thinking about using it for all sorts. He's going to make a lot of money from this yogurt, probably, if it tastes good. But that's not the news, a guy making yogurt who gives a shit. The news is, the way he made this yogurt is he basically had a patent donated to him from a bigger company that had figured out instant yogurt, and they weren't using the patent, so they gave it to this small-time entrepreneur guy, and he took the patent and he went nuts, and now he's got a successful yogurt business.
Entrepreneur? Entrepreneur.
Whatever.
People in the forums are going to jump down your throat. I figured I'd preempt it.
Yeah, okay. So, now there's this big movement, because, 90 to 95% of patents are just sitting there not doing anything. No one's making any money off of them. They're just patents that companies collect over time in case they want to sue someone or in case they need one. And, there's this bunch of groups of people who are trying to encourage these big companies with useless, unused patents to donate them to small businesses.
I think that's cool.
Well, here's the thing that bothers me about it, though. This is sort of backwards when you think about it. The point of the patent is that the small-time guy comes up with something, and then he's protected from the big guys. But now, it's the small guy has to beg the big guys to let go of the idea he came up with already, that they just happen to have a patent on because they have a million patents. And he can't make his money off his idea without, a donation, a nice donation from the guy who's already got more money than he knows what to do with. The other thing is, if you're a big company with a lot of unused patents, and you're donating them to one guy so he can make money, what the hell? Donate them to, the world. Just give them up so everyone can do something.
Maybe we need some sort of legislation that would automatically release patents to the public domain if they're unused or under certain circumstances.
I would say unused for 6 months, it's gone. It's like
maybe
if you're not...
a year or two.
What? Well, okay, if you're not... It's like you don't have to be, making money off it right now. If I patent some gizmo, and... on the side, I'm working on the gizmo, as long as I'm still working on it, but if I forget about it for 6 months to a year, that I'm done. It's like, what the hell? If you're not making money off that invention you just made, then why do you have a patent on it? You're just hurting everyone else by restricting everyone's freedom to invent and sell and make businesses around whatever that crazy thing you patented is. We shouldn't have to beg you to give it up to one small guy who now can do whatever that thing is without competition.
Well, a lot of companies just keep patents around as kind of a defensive tactic. So if someone sues them for any sort of patent thing, they can usually turn around and countersue the other person for 10 or 15 other patent things.
Yep. There's a quote from an IBM guy, of course, because IBM is the king of patents.
God, I mean, I'm still up for a patent at IBM.
Yeah, you ready for this? IBM Corp has more than 40,000 patents, according to company spokesman Steve Malkovich.
They pushed us to get patents. Every day it was like, get a patent yet? Got anything you can patent? Fill out this form, we'll patent it.
Yep. Rather than give away their idle patents, the company keeps them, but allows some groups to use this technology for free. They believe the strategy helps generate new innovation and growth. You know what helps generate new innovation and growth? Stop fucking patenting everything so people can just do things.
Well, because that's a lie, obviously. The real answer is we have weapons. It's basically patents in the modern corporate world are not actually patents in the old way. They're effectively economic nuclear weapons. Where if anyone tries to nuke you, you've got so many that you just destroy them in turn.
Yep.
And if two big companies get into a tiff, I can imagine all sorts of hilarity, and I look forward to that day with great enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Oh, apparently Suzanne Schell is a chicken farmer, according to the internet.
Yeah, this whole patent situation just gets worse and worse all the time, and it's really not good. I mean, it says in the Constitution, patents are there to promote, like, people inventing and researching and trying new things. Now, patents are just hurting people from trying to invent new things.
Well, part of it's that patents had a certain
science.
They had a certain term, how long they would last. And now technology moves so fast that by the time a patent falls out of its term, it's been obsolete for 7 years already.
Not only that, but it's way too easy to get them, and the patent office is not so good at choosing which ones to approve and which ones not to approve. You know, they pretty much let through all kinds of bullshit and don't let through good stuff.
Things of the day. I'm sure you all remember, or at least know about, the 1984 ad from Apple computers back in the day. It's probably one of the most famous video advertisements ever.
Yep, it played during the 84 Super Bowl. It was for Macintoshes. And
I really like the aesthetic of it, because I generally dislike 1984-like societies.
I'm really not a fan of the ad like other people are. Like,
Well,
I recognize significance, but I don't enjoy watching it. I don't think it's fun or entertaining at all.
I like the ad, except for the fact that it's advertising Apple. Instead, I don't care about what it's selling, but I ignore that in ads anyway. I just like I like the visuals of it.
Oh, it has nothing to do with what it's selling. Even if the ad was for, like, you know, Scott's Awesome.
Like, you know.
I still wouldn't like it. I just don't like it.
All right. You're entitled to your incorrect opinion.
What are you talking about?
Well, someone did something funny on the internet, and actually, NPR It's All Politics did talk about this quite a bit. Someone, and no one knows who as yet, unless this has changed in the last few hours, took that old ad and matched it up with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and they also added an iPod to it. It's very high quality, and it's basically an anti-Hillary, pro-Obama ad that's pretty well done. And the thing is, that alone wouldn't be news. But the fact that it got all over the internet, and then it got on CNN, and it's on all the major media, and everyone's talking about it, and NPR It's All Politics went into great detail about how they think this is the beginning of a new era in political advertising with these kind of underground, unaffiliated, no one paid for them, even if they violate laws or if they're really, really negative or whatever. Internet advertising, if someone really likes a candidate, it's their right, freedom of speech, to say whatever they want as long as they don't violate any laws. So as a result, we're going to see a lot of advertising for candidates that doesn't hit the mainstream media. And they're speculating that this presidential election in 2008 is going to be decided by the internet as opposed to by the traditional media.
Eventually, it's going to be decided by the internet. I think now a large portion of it will be, and perhaps years from now, the whole thing will be.
We've seen the trend. I mean, Howard Dean's popularity existed solely because of his grassroots hippie internet action.
That is correct. And Obama has more internet action going on than anyone I've ever seen.
God, Obama does a podcast, and he has a pretty good radio voice.
Yeah. Thing is, I don't know how it's like, there's limits on how much you can spend on advertising and such. So I think a lot of people are going to do internet advertising and pretend that they didn't pay for it when they did.
Oh, obviously. Especially, I mean, say you want to attack a candidate. You don't want to be known as that candidate who attacks that other candidate. So what if some guy who happens to be a friend of some other guy who happens to be a gopher on your campaign makes a flash video of two Republican senator hopeful presidential candidates fellating each other and talking about how bad they are on whatever issue you're talking about? Yeah. There's nothing illegal about that because you can't prove the connection or that any money was traded.
Yeah, it's really not looking too well for the campaign finance reforms.
I'm not so worried about campaign finance reform anymore. I'm more worried about a lot of other issues.
See, here's the thing, though. In the short term, it's going to be sucky because now these people who have a lot of money are going to be even more likely to win, and the other people are going to be less likely to lose because these people will afford to put like big ass fancy ads that are going to be all over the internet and get a lot of them.
But at the same
time, in
the
long run, now if the internet is the decider, I can make shit on the internet, and now like I'd say maybe in like 12 to 16 years from now, the small-time candidate can put just as many videos about him on the internet, and he'll get known without having to spend millions on TV ads.
Yep. You can also get away with a lot more on the internet for now, because the culture on the internet, as opposed to the meat space culture that isn't on the internet, seems to be, in a general way, a lot more liberal. Not necessarily leftist, but liberal in a general libertine sense.
In the way it was meant in, say, 1910.
So as a result, you can say things on the internet to appeal to certain kinds of voters that the voters who this wouldn't appeal to would never know you said it.
Yes, you can say things in places where, other people won't see. Like, if you say something on TV, pretty much everyone who votes is going to see it. But if you go to say...
Well, except us.
Yes. But if you go to, like, the Geeknights forums and you say, I love computers, and then you go over to...
the Neo-Luddite forums?
The Neo-Luddite forums, and you say, man, computers are terrible. And then... you go to the pedophile forums and you say, I'll let you guys slide. And then you go to the chat rooms where all the police are trying to catch pedophiles and you say, I'm going to catch all these bastards. No one will ever know you said all these things.
Well, for now.
Yeah.
But it's a useful tool.
Yep. All right, so if you haven't been paying attention, the latest hotness in the Web 2.0 internets is this thing called Twitter.
I started listening to Twit for some reason. I don't know if I like it. It just, if I turn it on, I end up listening to it.
Yep, that's pretty much what happens to me.
They're kind of mesmerizing, their voices, because they have more expensive microphones than us.
Yeah, I listened to 2 Twits today. Anyway, Twitter is a thing. I'm going to tell you what it is in a second.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was, but...
It has nothing to do with Twit other than the Twit people use it.
And talk about it more than they should.
They talked about it recently in one episode a lot. Anyway, it is made by the people who made Odeo, and the people who made Odeo are pretty much giving up Odeo and doing Twitter now.
Oh, huh. So they made Odeo, which didn't work and was basically useless, and now they're making Twitter.
Well, Twitter's sort of made and done. There's really not much more it can do.
Then what are they doing?
Okay, Twitter is... You ready for this? This is really dumb. All you do is you can say 140 characters worth of text that answers the question, what are you doing? And you have a picture and you have a name. And it also has a GPS coordinate, and it says, there are different ways to send it. You can send it by SMS, you can send it by instant message, or you can send it on the website. That's it. So let's say, here's an example of Twitter usage. You ready? I wake up in the morning, I pick up my cell phone, and I say, I just woke up, smiley, and I push the button. Now, on my Twitter, it says the time, it says Beacon, New York, and it says Scott, it has exactly what I typed in. I woke up, hooray, via SMS. Then I take a shower. I'm going to take a shower. So I go over to my computer and I log into the website and I say, I'm going to take a shower now. And it says on Twitter, I'm going to take a shower now.
Huh.
And now anyone who befriends me on Twitter can see all these things that I'm saying about what I'm doing. And anyone that I befriend, I can see what they're doing. And I can have those things sent to me by SMS or instant message. Or I can look at them on the web. And some things are public. You can just go to Twitter, TWITTER.com, and look at what things people are saying and doing in different places around the world and how they're saying those things via SMS or IM or whatever.
So it's basically all the bad parts of MySpace and LiveJournal without any of the good.
It's sort of like, not an away message, but like a here message. You have a constant here message that you just keep changing, only they keep adding on top of each other.
I'm going to qualify everything I'm about to say about this by stating that the idea of having a constantly updating feed of what you were doing that people you care about can look at or that you can reference later to see what you did at certain times is interesting, and I can see uses for that. This implementation, I would say borders on the silly, but that's like saying that Alaska borders on the chili.
Well, here's the thing, is that alone, I could go for that. If it's just, what are you doing? Here's the thing. People have pretty much taken this now, and it's just a giant worldwide IRC. People are friending thousands of people and being befriended by thousands of people. And I see messages on here, like, here's one, at Vincent Ferrari. What if the @ is at you, ? Smiley. Somebody is talking to someone else by posting a worldwide message that's supposed to be, what are you doing right now? But they're specifically trying to say, hey, Vincent Ferrari, look at this message. It's for you.
See, now that at least is a little interesting. It's kind of a global, stupid, inane chat room.
It's just a worldwide IRC that you can only say 140 characters at once. That's the opposite. It would be cool if it was what it said it was going to be, but now it's just a worldwide IRC channel.
Now, while that is silly, I posit, Scott, who would have so little of a life that they would watch this?
The twits.
Who would have so little going on that they have the time to constantly type 140 or so characters of what they're doing into a website?
Who would have so little time in life that they can sit here watching this, sending chat messages to the whole world and chatting with the whole world?
See, now that's a little bit better than the original usage, in my opinion.
I think that's worse.
See,
why don't you make an IRC channel and everyone join? It's better.
Who's the bigger loser, though? The person who tells the world constantly when they masturbate and when they take showers? Or the guy who watches that and feels enriched by it?
I don't know. Neither one is good. But anyway, my thing of the day is not Twitter itself. I just wanted to let you know what Twitter was because it's something you should probably
Make fun of
because it's the latest internet hotness.
I have a solution to Twitter, but I'll get to that in a bit.
Right. Well, my thing of the day is Twitter Vision. You can go to twittervision.com, TWITTER vision.com, or twittermap.com/twittervision. It's Twitter plus Google Maps. Basically, you sit here looking at Google Maps, and whenever someone twitters, it puts a little dot on the map, and you see what they said, and then it loads up some more Twitters, and you get to sit here, and you'll see pretty much every Twitter around the world where it is, what they said, constantly.
So I've got like 3 or 4 ideas for Twitter pranks already.
Apparently, a lot of people are using Twitter for marketing. Like, it seems like in the UK somewhere, there's a Twitter guy named Fresh Podcast who just keeps linking to podcasts.
Wow.
And I'm like, who the hell is sitting here watching what this guy has to say to get a new podcast? Go to Dig Podcast and search for something. What the hell?
No, number 1. Perhaps someone sets their GPS stuff to be in the middle of North Korea, and then they post something like, OMG, I got internet access, help me. And wait for the internet to react to that. Two. What if someone posts, OMG, I saw a UFO, and then silence? Or a bunch of people with the same GPS all post these UFO sightings all at once, like in Montana, and then silence from all of them forevermore, so the conspiracy nuts have a field day. Now, idea number 3. I have a feeling that military engagements could end this right quick. Suppose we get all the rational people on the internet together and deploy the mighty cockboat army on Twitter.
Just start putting cockboats in there? 140 character long cockboats?
I'm talking about entire cockboat destroyer groups.
Oh, man.
Now, of course, you would have to set your GPS coordinates so they were, in fact, in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans.
Oh, my God.
Now, if we coordinate this properly, this could be utterly hilarious. If the internet is with me, we will put something together.
I think I might use the Twitter for just one day and then not use it again.
And then what, review it?
No, but that way at least, it's like, it is an important part of internet history because this is probably going to be something that, comes and then dies, sort of like Odeo did.
And then 20 years later, people say, do you remember Twitter?
And I'll be like, haha, I used that for one day. Instead of, haha, I remember some people use that, but I don't really remember what it was like.
We've already got a lot of things like that, though. I mean, Kingdom of Loathing.
Yep. It's sort of like how it's worth it to make a MySpace account, even if you don't really use it. It's sort of like how it's worth it to poke around LiveJournal once just to know what it is, Be on Facebook once. So I'll be on Twitter once.
That ought to be interesting.
It might be.
You should keep a log of how many times you can't resist the urge to just write an ASCII penis.
I don't know.
I would bet that is going to be within the first 2 things you post on Twitter.
No, I imagine I'm just going to basically type in what I'm doing for 24 hours whenever I do something new.
Wow.
That's what it's supposed to be, so that's the way I'm going to use it.
I don't see this being the best use of your time.
Well, I'm going to try. I think what I'm going to do is I'll try to do it with SMS or IM so it doesn't take very long.
So tonight.
Plus, think about it. I mean, at one point, it's going to be like, I'm at work. And like 4 hours later, I'm eating lunch. I'm done eating lunch. I'm back to work. Then, 4 hours later, I'm going home.
So, tonight, lately our How Computers Work series has been very popular among the listeners, especially all the networking stuff. And also, we're very lazy and we haven't felt like talking about any technology topics lately.
Yeah, technology topics. I mean, while we know a lot about technology, there's only so much you can say about a lot of things, and sometimes we have to do some research if it's not something we've used in regular daily life.
Also, we just generally are lazy, and the fact that you guys seem to want these less technical How Computers Works as opposed to the here are the frequency bands of 802.11b channels kind of podcast.
Here's how Manchester encoding works. All right. Today, we're going to talk about something that you probably aren't familiar with, but you should be. We're going to talk about version control systems.
Now, this is a topic that generally a lot of people think only applies to coders, people who write programs.
Well, people even know what version control systems are in the first place.
Yeah, but this is the kind of thing that you might not even realize you have this problem. Or you might have the problem and not realize that there's a solution.
Or you might not even care.
Yeah, you might not. But in general, this is something that many people could be using to great effect to make their productivity and their lives generally better and easier to manage.
Mm-hmm.
It is also something that is on Slashdot recently people were talking about. I think that our Congress, the United States Congress, should be by law required to use something like this.
I agree.
But anyway, version control is actually something very, very simple.
Yes, basically, you have some sort of information that one or more people is working on. However, this, let's pretend it's a document. It's a Word document. That's fine.
Yeah, we're writing a guide on how to cook a goat.
All right, a guide on how to cook a goat, right? So I write up the guide on how to cook a goat. And now Rim wants to make some changes.
Yep,
well, obviously, you're thinking about wikis already, you people. I know you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, Rim makes some changes to it. And then I make some changes. And then someone else makes some changes. And we keep updating and working on this guide to how to make a goat together. Or maybe just alone. It doesn't matter.
Yep, but the thing is, we're doing this by traditional methods. Download the file, edit it, put it back up.
Yep, and now, if Rim does that, what if he accidentally erased one of my paragraphs? Or he changed something I did, and I forget just how I said it? Well, the old versions, unless we could just keep a whole bunch of files, and every time there's a new version of the document, we make a whole new file, and we've got all these files just lined up. And now, if I want to see what the difference is between the newest version and the oldest version, it's like a pain in the ass. And if I want to replace a part of the new version with a part of 2 versions ago, it's also a pain in the ass. And it basically is a pain in the ass and a lot of manual labor, and it sucks.
And also, it doesn't deal with a very maybe not obvious problem, but a problem that comes up quite a bit whenever multiple people are working on any sort of project, especially in computers. It's kind of a race condition where the time that you start to edit something can matter. Well, let's say I download it and start editing. I start adding a paragraph.
And then I downloaded it and I start deleting something.
And then I put my version up, which has my new paragraph. And then Scott puts his version up that doesn't have my new paragraph, but it has the things he took out.
And now Rim's work is gone.
My work is gone. Scott's work hasn't taken mine into account. Maybe a third person was trying to edit, but Scott didn't download the file. He was working on the one on the server, so the guy couldn't even write it back.
Yep.
Now we've lost information. Everything's chaotic. Everything's done.
So the solution is to have a version control system. You know how when you get software and software says it's version 1.0 or 1.1 or 2.3 or whatever, those numbers come from version control systems. People didn't just, everyone has a different system for how the numbers work. Like the Linux kernel does the numbers by, 2.6 is the series, and then like .25 is the 25th kernel in the 2.6 series. And Ubuntu does it by the date. So Edgy is 610 because it came out on June, 10. Or was it? No, it came out in October of 06. That's why it's 610.
And a lot of programs just do the major minor. So version 1.0 is the first major release. 1.1 is a minor update. 1.2 is another minor update. 2.0 is the second major release.
Yep.
That sort of thing.
Everyone uses a different system of numbering, but those numberings come from the version control systems.
Now, there are a lot of ways to do this, and we're really not going to go into technical depth, but you might have heard of terms like CVS or Subversion.
Or RCS. Those are pretty much the big 3.
Yeah, and a lot of people do it manually, partly because they might not know that there are content management systems out there that'll do this for them and version things for them, or two, they might just not understand that this is a good thing. Maybe they're crazy Luddites. Yep. Maybe they don't like CVS. I don't know.
Well, some people use like the stuff that's built into Microsoft Office and Word, but that stuff really sucks compared to what CVS and others already do. Basically, how these version control systems work is not too complicated. You have some sort of repository where all of the stuff all the stuff everyone is working on sits there.
Now, this could be a database, it could be a file, it could be a directory with just all the version files in it.
Yeah, it could be on your computer, it could be on a server somewhere else. It doesn't really matter.
It could be a safe deposit box in a bank.
Yep. It's a place where all the information sits about everything that has ever been done to the things you are working on, from the oldest version to the newest version. And it just sits there. Now, the way it works is when you want to work on something, you check it out. So let's say there's a project me and Rim are working on. Say the latest episode of Geeknights. It's in there. It's in the repository. The work that's already been done is in there. I'm sitting at a computer that's brand new. So I connect to the repository, however you connect to it, network, hard drive, whatever. I check it out. Now I've got the version of the work, the newest one, that was in the repository, because I checked out the newest one. I could have checked out an older one. I start working on it. I edit the copy that I checked out. Now Rim, he checks out, and he's working on it. Now, there are two other things I can do. Well, there are lots of things you can do, but the major ones are update. Update says, all right, I've got the work I've done right in front of me. Go look on that repository, and if there's anything newer there that was changed since I checked out, bring that down to me so I can incorporate it into what I've just done. That's update. The other thing you can do is commit, which says, take what I've got right here and put it in as the next version. So, check this out. Rim starts working on it. I start working on it. Rim updates. He sees that nothing happened, so he commits. Now, Rim's version is in there. He's in the repository. But I'm working on the previous version to what Rim has done. Before I commit my work right on top of Rim's work, I update. Now, Rim's changes that he just did come down. And I look at what I've done, and I look at what Rim's done. I mix them together, which is real easy. And then I commit. And now our work isn't lost. It's in there. And everything's cool. Plus, I can go in and I can say all kinds of cool stuff, like show me the difference between this version and the last version. Give me the older version because the new version sucks. All kinds of cool stuff like that. It's nice and easy and everything's awesome.
Now, you can see how this is a great advantage. I mean, without version control, you're eventually going to have a mess, and you're very much limited in the number of people who can be working on one project or the number of people who can collaborate simultaneously.
You're also much more likely to lose lots of data and have a pain-in-the-ass time, especially if you're working on software.
Yep. Now, two, with simple, primitive version control, the most primitive forms generally just involved if I check a file out, like before any of this, or I'm using a file, and someone else tries to edit it, it says, hey, someone else is editing this, don't fuck with it.
That's what RCS does.
Yep. And while that's not great, at least you don't lose data anymore. It slows down productivity, because now if Scott's working, I can't work, and if I'm working, Scott can't work, but at the same time, at least you're not going to lose anything.
And at least you can still keep track of different versions of something.
Yep, which is very important, because then you can track back who added what when, you can figure out when problems appeared. Maybe someone likes an old version and you want to incorporate that into a newer version. Maybe you want to split off and fork, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Yep.
And really, in general, you can just get a lot more done a lot more quickly. People can collaborate simultaneously on single projects.
Yeah, think about what it would be like if, say, you were trying to write a book, a big instruction manual for something, and there were like 100 people on the team. It's basically impossible without a version control system of some sort. It's as essential as the hammer. Without this tool, you couldn't hammer a goddamn nail. But because of the tool, we can do amazing things.
Now, to look at a very practical, semi-non-technical application, I said a bit before about the Congress of the United States. For those of you who aren't American, which is a good number of you, the way laws work in America basically boils down to the fact that very few of our elected representatives actually read any laws that they vote for or against. Mm-hmm. Partly because there's so many laws, partly because the laws are long, and all sorts of problems. As a result, a lot of aides end up doing the work. It's not that difficult for someone to just change a law and not tell anyone, and then no one will notice and they'll vote on it. It happened recently, pretty spectacularly, actually.
Yeah, also, lots of laws. Like, a law will be, like, the funding of the Something Something Act of 2007. But when you look at the law, like, the beginning part of it might have something to do with funding the Something Something. But then after that, it says, oh, and by the way, give money to RIM. Oh, and by the way, you can't build a school in Connecticut. Oh, and by the way, you can build a bridge in Alaska.
All in favor of the Springfield/Pervert Act?
Aye.
But yeah, so how would you deal with this? Well, Congress has tried to deal with it in various ineffective ways, even though something like CVS or any sort of version control system would all but eliminate this problem.
Plus, the other problem we have in the U.S. government is we got these two branches of the legislative branch, two legislative branches.
Yep.
And, like, the House will have one version of a bill, and then the Senate will have a different version of the same bill, and they vote on them separately. And then they go to this conference committee, which mixes them together. Like, if they pass both houses, the two different laws, two different bills in both houses, then they go to a conference committee, and they mix them together to get the same one, and then they vote on them again.
It's really kind of silly. And this is one of the things that bothers me in general about the world, is that there are solutions, relatively simple solutions, to long-standing problems with society, culture, technology, everything. And for various reasons, the people who have much to gain, or actually in this case, possibly much to lose, since they use a lot of their, shortcuts and tricks and shenanigans, these solutions aren't adopted, aren't even looked at. The people who have the problems don't even understand that these solutions exist.
People don't understand technology, so any technology solutions, they're not even gonna... It's like, there are people who... Like, it's sort of like regular expressions. Like, people will be editing some file, and they'll need to, like, find and replace something, or they need to do something clever. And you know what they'll do? They'll copy, and they'll go paste, 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 and then they'll edit every single line by hand, and they won't even realize. They'll be like, that's just the way it's done. They won't even think, if only there was a way that this could be done easier. There is a way.
If only there was some sort of machine that could do large numbers of menial calculations over and over again as fast as possible.
If only... Yeah, I don't know. It's like people don't even know they have the problems to even think if there was a solution.
Now,
there are solutions to problems that you have that you don't know you have.
Obviously, the Congress example is somewhat more complicated than we might have made it out to be. But the fact remains that, well, one, we've thought about this a lot, and I could go into great detail as to the more specific ideas I have regarding that.
Yep.
But in general, I think the idea stands that there are problems that can be solved trivially by technology that are not solved by technology for no good reason.
Mm-hmm. All right. You want to talk about some specific version control type topics?
All right. Well, I'd like to talk about forking, because a lot of people don't seem to know what forking means, and it's kind of related to
Or
this.
branching.
All right. So let's say I'm working on my how to cook a goat thing, and Scott's working on it with me, and we get to version 2.1, and everything's going fine. And suddenly Scott says, you know what? We're going about this all wrong. You're supposed to cook goats on grills, and we've been talking about cooking them in ovens, and I'm done with this business, and I'm going to write my own guide, and I'm going to take all the data we got and do my own thing. And I say, you know what? Screw your idea. I'm sticking with what we've got. Now we've got a problem. We've got one document and two different philosophies as to where to go forward from here.
Now, we could just keep making versions where we go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
That is silly.
That is very silly.
That happens on Wikipedia often. Luckily, there are safeguards to stop that.
Luckily, yes.
Luckily.
He died. Forks are when you break off and you split it two ways, or possibly more than two ways. So now we've got the oven methodology fork and the grill methodology fork. So I've started a whole new chain of updates going that way, and Rim has started a whole new chain of updates going that way.
It's kind of like evolution, where two species break off from a common ancestor species.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
And you'll often see people talking about forks when in open source projects, like when X386, right? X386 was the X server that people used on Unix and Linux systems and to make the GUI show up, and it's still what they use. However, people used to use X386. Now people use Xorg. What happened was, at a certain point, the people who do X386 made some stupid changes to their license, and they did some stuff that no one liked, and people were very upset with them. So they went to the previous version of X386 before the bullshit happened, and they forked it. and to a new thing called Xorg.
Which now you pretty much should be using. You don't really want to be using X386.
No one's using X386 anymore, except people with old computers that can't be updated. But X386 continued along its merry, stupid way. At least I don't know. Is it still continuing?
I've never looked.
I don't even know if anyone's still working on it. That's how much it died. But the fork of X386, Xorg, is going along quite nicely, and it is the very awesome.
So now, if you ever wondered what people like us mean when we say, hey, blah, 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 he forked the Linux kernel. Now, that's it. That's all it is. You fork off into two separate paths going in usually separate directions, or at least different directions.
Yep. Now, here's a funny one. There is a fork of CVS, the concurrent what's CVS? It's like concurrent version system?
Something like that. I don't actually remember.
Concurrent version control system? I'm not even sure.
It's one of those things that you use so often, you never really care what the acronym
Concurrent
stands for.
versioning system? Maybe?
We have the internet at our disposal.
I know, but I closed my laptop. But anyway, there's a fork of CVS itself, which is quite ironic, called Subversion. And the main difference, there are a lot of differences. And, basically, it's not like we just talked about where Xorg was great and X386 sucked and everyone uses Xorgs now. People still use CVS and people use Subversion because they're both good in their own way. They're just different philosophies on versioning control.
Concurrent versions system.
Oh, I was close. Anyway, the main difference between CVS and Subversion is that CVS has every single file in a repository is separate. So let's say I'm working on a book with Rim, and we put each chapter in a separate document. And I edit one chapter and with the first version was 0.1, and I edit one chapter. Now that chapter is version 0.2, and all the other chapters are still 0.1 because they're still on their first version. That's how CVS works. So in CVS, every single file is going to have a current version, and that's good for a lot of things. Sometimes you want to have every different file have a different version. In Subversion, you have what is called atomic commits, where every single file goes with the same version. So let's say we're working on, we put the initial version of the book in there. Then I edit one chapter, and I commit. Now, even if those other chapters aren't updated, they got it. The next version of the chapter is it makes a new version. So 0.2, there's a new version of the other chapters. They're just the same as the older version. This is good for software for a lot of reasons. For example, I'm working on a software project, right? I make some changes to one source file and another source file. If you don't have the right versions of every source file, the program probably won't work. So how do you know if you need version 1.5 of this and 1.7 of that and 2.3 of that in order to make it work? It's tough.
Yep. Now, you can't control the version numbers of external programs or external libraries or external sources you happen to be using. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you can at least control all the things that you were working on to be the same version, to make it at least a little bit easier.
Yep. So with Subversion, if someone's doing software with Subversion and you only commit when the software works, that whatever version you check out of Subversion, you're going to get something that probably works and not, this version of that file and this version of that file in order to go to the previous version of the software. So for certain types of projects, the atomic commits of Subversion are pretty awesome. And for certain other kinds of things, the non-atomic commits of CVS are awesome. So you got to, choose which one you like sometimes, depending on your philosophy. Maybe choose the one that's better for whatever project you're working on. Etc. Now, here's something really cool. I'm pretty sure it's called a tinderbox, but I'm not 100% sure. And basically, what a tinderbox does, it's a specific software tool. You have a version control system. The tinderbox will look at the latest version of the software in the version control system and make sure that it works. Sort of. It'll run some tests on it. Does it compile? Does it run without core dumping? Whatever. And if it someone breaks the software by committing, say, something with a syntax error, the tinderbox will go, oh, fucks, someone messed up. So now you know that, who messed up because you can see who committed the change. You can see what version. You can go back to the previous version that that works. You can go and look at the difference between the broken version and the previous version is working and see where they screwed up. And then you can get the tinderbox to turn green again, and then people can get back to work because they know they won't screw it up. And this helps you develop software, not only with all the advantages of version control, but keeping a working product the whole time and never, totally screwing up all the code. And now you don't know where the problem is that's making it not go.
Now, just in general, the best thing about something like CVS is that, from my standpoint, as a guy who would maintain the server but has nothing to do with the code, because the code I write is dubious at best and usually relegated to the script category. I'm an IT guy, but I've managed CVS servers. It's so trivial to take care of a CVS server.
You just kind of turn it on and let people set the permissions.
But you got to turn it on until you got to back up the data.
Oh, backing up is so important.
Yeah, but that's it. That's all you got to do. I mean, if it breaks, it's not going to break. The server's going to break before CVS is going to break. CVS is pretty tried and true.
It's real old, and I mean, even Subversion, which is much newer than CVS, is tried and true, and you can totally trust it for whatever you're doing. There are other ones like Git, which is the one I think that I'm pretty sure Linus Torvalds developed it when he stopped using BitKeeper because BitKeeper did something weird. There's a whole story about that. You can go research it on the internet if you want.
You probably don't care. In fact, I'll bet that we've already gone into more technical depth than any of you care about.
There's not really much more to say that isn't technically deep. Well, here, let's think of some interesting uses for version control systems that are out of the ordinary. I got one. The one that I say is if you've got, say, a My Documents folder, put the whole thing in a version control system. Then you got a backup because it's, hopefully on some other server somewhere. And if you ever change any of your documents, well, now you can go back and get old versions. You can see what your My Documents folder was like in 2003 or 2002. You can see what your My Documents folder is like today. If you have multiple computers and your version control system is on a server, you can be at home, check out your My Documents folder, make some changes, check them in, go to work, check out your new My Documents folder. So it's sort of like your stuff is stored on a server, but you can kind of mix and match the versions, work on something at home, work at something at work.
Granted, you could do that almost as easily with roaming profiles or a remote home directory or all that sorts of business.
I know a lot of scary people who put their whole home directories in CVS.
Wow.
I wouldn't recommend that.
I'll put my home directory on a separate hard drive mounted, but
I'd put my configuration files for my computer in CVS. That way, you go to a new computer, you want to set it up just like the one at home, check out all the configuration files, you're done. Bang.
Yep. I actually did that for a DNS DHCP server combo when I was at RIT working in labs, because it was just bam, and I had it there exactly the way I wanted it.
Yeah, and then, say one day one of your settings is bothering you, so you change it on one machine.
Yep.
Then, it's changed on all your other machines, because you check out the same settings from the same repository.
Also, I'd recommend anyone learning about computers do this sort of thing, because even if you don't need the version control, it's something you should know about, and unlike a lot of other things that you should know about on the internet and with computers, it's really easy to learn how to use CVS. Like, I'm not kidding.
There's basically 3 commands. There's a lot of advanced commands, like the command to fork is a little complicated, but the basic commands of check in, check out, update are real simple.
Yes. I mean, we're not just saying this as two guys who are technologically proficient. Seriously.
Mm-hmm. The one last thing you're going to want to learn CVS or Subversion for is that there's a lot of open source software out there that, you want to get the newest version. And of course, the open source people, they have people around the world working on one piece of software. Guess what? They keep all that source code in a CVS or a Subversion.
Yep. I mean, let's say you're using Red Hat or whatever. You have to wait for the people doing the project or their friends to make your RPM file, which is probably a few little tiny versions behind. Maybe it comes out late. Maybe you need the newest version now.
Maybe you want to try out the version that people are working on. Maybe you want to work on the newest version of an open source project.
You're probably going to have to go into CVS to get it, because they're not going to make binaries of every little release just for you.
Yes, and you can also, a lot of times, get a much newer version of software than is easily available by going through the slight trouble of checking out the absolute up-to-the-minute newest version of the source code from CVS and then compiling it yourself.
I mean, even Gentoo, which generally has very up-to-date sources in its update tree, there are times when there will be stuff you want that for whatever reason isn't in there. Even then, granted, many of you aren't even going to ever use Gentoo, so it doesn't matter. But CVS is usually the way to get the bleedingest edge of any given software.
Yeah, because people are working on it. Like, if a guy was working on something 5 minutes ago and he submits his updates, you can grab those and take advantage of those new feature he just coded 5 minutes ago.
This is especially great when you've got new hardware or new something, and support for that new something is in the newest alpha stage of some program that you need.
Or say, if you have a piece of software that you rely heavily on, but it's still in super development, or there's a lot of people working on it, but it's not quite there yet. Like, a lot of people will check out the newest versions of Firefox from CVS's or get the nightly builds and stuff like that just to get, the Firefox 3 features before Firefox 3 comes out. Even though it's sort of unstable and still being worked on, you can get it. It's there.
So I suppose that's that. Even though it's not the night for it, I would like to point out that we have contests running both Wednesday night and Thursday night, and the deadlines are Wednesday and Thursday.
Oh,
This
snap.
is the final week. I'm going to remind everyone, I think I'll extend the deadline one day because one person on one of the contests said they had a good entry and they emailed me personally, so I might accept a few late. But we've gotten some pretty good entries on both, so I'm not too worried here.
And if you want to enter those, you're going to have to listen on Wednesday or Thursday, because we're not going to tell you what they are right now.
Oh, noes! This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Odeo on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.